Welcome everyone. I see some familiar faces here. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend this session. Since we last met at Google Cloud 2025, there's been a tremendous amount of innovation that we've introduced into Cloud SQL. And today we're going to deep dive into some of these innovations over the next 45 minutes. My name is Bala Narasimhan. I'm Group Product Manager for Cloud SQL. Co-presenting with me today is Itay Maoz, Senior Director of Engineering for Cloud SQL, and Abhishek Kumar, Director of Engineering from Rubrik. So this is our agenda for the next 45 minutes. As I said earlier, we're going to focus on some of the key innovations that we've introduced into Cloud SQL over the last 12 months. And we're going to do that by breaking them into three categories. The first category is focused on innovations for developers. What that means is that irrespective of your technical prowess, irrespective of your database depth, you will feel comfortable and confident now building applications with Cloud SQL. After that, we're going to focus on how Cloud SQL further raises the bar on enterprise readiness. And the third category is about how Cloud SQL is reimagining what a managed database is via agents and AI. After that, Abhishek will join us on stage. Abhishek will talk about the innovations happening at Rubrik and the role that Cloud SQL plays in that. So let's get started. We're going to start with the innovations in Cloud SQL focused on the developers. As all of us know, there are two phases in the app development cycle or in the agent development cycle. The first is the build phase. During this time, you are spending time in an IDE. You're writing code. You're fixing bugs. You're running tests. You're iterating as you build this application. And then there is the operate phase, where you run the application in production. During this time, things like security, observability, manageability become paramount. And the innovations that we've introduced in Cloud SQL make both these phases very easy for developers. And the reason for that is because we recently launched a managed MCP server for Cloud SQL. You may have heard about it in the keynote as well, where we talked about one MCP. This is one example of that. This is the managed MCP server for Cloud SQL. So let's deep dive into that and understand why that makes things easy for both phases in the application and agent development lifecycle. So as I said, this is a fully managed MCP server for Cloud SQL. As a developer, what this means for you is you no longer need to download, install, operate, patch an MCP server. Instead, you simply interact with an endpoint. And because this is a managed service from Google, it comes with enterprise-grade security, observability, and governance out of the box. Configuration of this managed MCP server for Cloud SQL is super simple. All you need to do is point your IDE to this URL, and you're off to the races. So we talked about the managed MCP server. Now let's talk about the build phase and how Cloud SQL combined with this managed MCP server makes writing code easy. Firstly, Cloud SQL now meets you where you are. If you are a pro coder who works in Visual Studio, Cloud SQL meets you there. If, like me, you like to work in a CLI, Cloud SQL meets you there too. Or if you're just getting started and you use Cloud Code, Cloud SQL meets you there as well. In addition to that, Cloud SQL easily integrates with popular agent frameworks like GCP's ADK. And what this basically means, it's now super simple to write applications, write agents quickly, and go to market. What does it really mean for a developer from a concrete point of view, right? What this basically means for a developer is that we've flattened the learning curve. You don't need to be a database expert anymore to build with Cloud SQL. You don't need to understand the idiosyncrasies of Postgres, MySQL, or SQL Server to build with Cloud SQL. Instead, all you need to do is write natural language prompts, and we take care of the rest. So you may be wondering how this managed MCP server interacts with Cloud SQL. It does so with a data API that we launched recently. The data API converts Cloud SQL into an endpoint, and you can simply issue SQL statements against this endpoint, and it executes on the Cloud SQL instance. This data API is available for all of you as well. What this means for you is that you no longer need to establish a persistent connection to your Cloud SQL instance in order to execute a SQL statement. Simply interact with the data API and run your SQL there. A popular use case this unlocks is around automation and infrastructure as code. So I know a lot of you use Terraform to operate your Cloud SQL fleets. And when you deploy Cloud SQL with Terraform until now, it'll take you till that 99th percentile. But in the end, when you have to create a user on your instance, or if you're using Postgres, if you have to create an extension on your instance, you still had to establish that persistent connection and do that. You no longer need that anymore with the data API. You get 100% automation, and through Terraform, you can manage the entire lifecycle of your Cloud SQL instance. The other very nice feature that we launched recently that I want to talk about is optimized cloning. If you're building a new feature, you want to make sure that you're able to do that in a sandbox. You want to isolate from the production environment so that you can iterate quickly in this sandbox. You can try new things, all without perturbing your production environment. Optimized cloning allows you to do exactly that. You can now create a clone really quickly of your production Cloud SQL instance. You can use that clone as a sandbox in which you can experiment, you can iterate, you can write code, try out new things. And because this optimized cloning feature uses copy on write semantics, it means that when you're doing that, you're not perturbing your production instance whatsoever. All right, so we've talked about the managed MCP server for Cloud SQL. We've talked about how Cloud SQL, when combined with this managed MCP server, redefines what it means to build applications. So now let's say we've built this application, we've written these natural language prompts, and we've built this application, and we're going to go into production. Let's talk about how we are changing the operations of Cloud SQL using the managed MCP server. As I said earlier, things like security, observability, and governance become super important. So the first thing I want to talk about is access control. With IAM, you're able to control who can interact with this managed MCP server for Cloud SQL. You can assign IAM permissions at the user level, at a service account level. You can do it at a group level as well. And then you can control who's able to interact with your Cloud SQL instance that way. Moreover, you want maybe to say that the agents that you have running in production can only do read operations on your Cloud SQL instance. And you want to protect your production instance from destructive operations. You can do that now. In database parlance, what this means is that you can limit your agent to doing select statements on your Cloud SQL instance, and you can prevent it from doing DDL or DML statements on your Cloud SQL instance. In addition to that, the managed MCP server comes with rich audit logging and observability. You're able to track every single action that an agent is taking when it's using this managed MCP server to interact with Cloud SQL. You get very rich database activity monitoring so that you can do forensics after the fact. And you also know the identity on whose behalf the agent is taking an action when it interacts with your Cloud SQL instance. Last but not least, the managed MCP server comes fully integrated with Model Armor. This means that you can protect your production Cloud SQL instance from malicious prompts. You can scan the data that's going back from your Cloud SQL instance to the agent to ensure that things like PII are not leaking as part of a result set from a query execution. So, when you think about agents, one of the important things is that you want your agents to understand the semantics of the business in which it's operating. Right? You want to move away from being a reactive system to a proactive system that can take intelligent actions. And for that, like I said, the agent must understand the context in which it's operating. And metadata plays a really important role there. For example, if you were to ask an agent a question like, how many active customers did we have last month in the Eastern region? It's really important that the agent understand what active customers means in that context. Similarly, it's really important to understand what Eastern region means in that context. Right? And Cloud SQL now is able to give you that. I'm very excited to announce Cloud SQL's integration with Knowledge Catalog. Through this integration, technical metadata in your Cloud SQL instance shows up in Knowledge Catalog in near real time. And after that, you're able to enrich this technical metadata with semantic information so that when your agent is building your agent and running it in production, the agent is able to fully understand the business context in which it's operating. Let me show you a quick demo of that. So in this demo, I'm going to show you a restaurant. It's called Bits and Bytes. And we have a restaurant manager who's a non-technical user. and she wants to analyze snacks consumption in this restaurant. And at this moment, she's specifically focused on Indian snacks. And so she's going to go and ask Knowledge Catalog, what are the data sets that I should look at in order for me to understand the Indian snacks consumption in our restaurant? Knowledge Catalog comes back with the right data sets. And then she realizes that they've had some new menu entries in the restaurant, and they haven't updated their operational Cloud SQL database to reflect that. And so what she does is she tells her agent to go create these new tables in her Cloud SQL instance to reflect the new menu entries. And we'll see that the technical metadata for those new tables shows up in Knowledge Catalog in near real time. So this is Cloud SQL Studio. This is the bits and bytes operational database. This is Knowledge Catalog. You're seeing the technical metadata for some of the menu entries there. The restaurant manager is a non-technical user. She's going to work with an agent. She's going to prompt the agent asking what data sets should I look at if I want to analyze the Indian snacks consumption in this restaurant. The agent interacts with Knowledge Catalog, and it brings back the right data sets. Now she understands that, oh, it's missing some of the newer menu entries, so she's going to update her Cloud SQL instance to add tables to reflect the new menu entries. And you're seeing the agent is going to go ahead and do that now. And now she's going to say, make sure that the metadata for these new menu entries have shown up in Knowledge Catalog. And you'll see that the technical metadata shows up in Knowledge Catalog pretty much in near real time. The near real-time aspect of this is very important because your agents need to understand your business semantics too in near real time so that it can make good decisions. So we're really excited about this integration between Cloud SQL and the Knowledge Catalog. I want to close this section by talking about Postgres. Postgres, as you all know, has become one of the most popular open source databases today. And when application developers think about building new applications or agents, they typically gravitate toward Postgres. Google is committed to Postgres and very excited about the fact that we are an active participant in this community. We do it in two ways. Firstly, we have a rich portfolio of Postgres services so that irrespective of your application's requirements, there is a Postgres database that's available for you to meet your requirements. More importantly, we contribute back to the Postgres open source community. You're seeing here on the screen some of the contributions we've made recently. In addition to this, we also participate in different Postgres events around the world where we share ideas about what we're learning and we learn from the community. We've recently started blogging about some of our contributions to Postgres. You'll see the link here. We'll constantly be updating that, so I recommend all of you follow this blog. And with that, I'm going to transition to Itay. Itay is going to talk about the innovations around enterprise readiness and how we are redefining managed databases.
Thanks, Bala. So raise your hand if you care about security, high availability, data protection, performance, scale. Okay, I see almost everyone raise their hand. So lots of hands. So we've been working with our enterprise customers for many years. And just like you, this is exactly what they told us that they care about. And when it comes to enterprise readiness, our best edition for Cloud SQL is the Enterprise Plus edition. We have innovated across 4 pillars: security and data protection, high availability, performance and scalability, and AI-powered observability. In the following slides, I'll talk about a couple of examples of new features that we launched in the last year in each one of these pillars. I will start with security. So we have an holistic approach for security. It starts with the network security, where we have private service access, private service connect, VPC service controls, and encryption in transit. Then we have access control, where we enable you to decide who has access to what information and what they can do with it, with authentication and authorization. With information protection, we have data encryption with Google Managed Keys, Customer Managed Encryption Keys, and External Key Manager. And then with threat protection, we have audit logs, access transparency and access approvals, events, and command and center integration. Now, the first feature that I would like to talk about is the brute force attack protection for Cloud SQL. So with this feature, the way it works is that we automatically detect that there is a brute force attack or an attempt to do a brute force attack, and we proactively throttle the attack and protect the instance. We provide you insights using logs and metrics, and we provide configurable alerts. We, in addition, provide actionable recommendations. So let's look at a demo. So in this demo, we have a Cloud SQL instance using the Postgres database. We can see we have a few users. So we have Alice as one of the users. And now we're going to emulate a repeated retries. We're going to emulate an attack, a brute force attack. So we see repeated login attempts. And we can see that these happen all the time. And then after some threshold, we say, OK, this is suspicious. We're going to now start throttling the attack. And now you're going to see that the next request that we're going to send, we're going to not respond back and throttle the attack, protecting the instance. Now, you'll get an alert via the email that there is something suspicious, and you'll be able to view the incident. When you click View the Incident, you will see the logs for all of the attempt logins. And then for each one of the logs, you'll be able to see the user, and you'll be able to see the IP address, and that Cloud SQL throttled the response in order to prevent a potential attack. Now, you will also see this data in the metrics, and you can take actionable preventive action, which is to update the firewall in this case. So in your Cloud SQL configuration, you can change the CIDR rules and then deny access to this suspicious IP. So I think this is a super useful, super important tool that we encourage you to try out. OK. Now, let's move on to the next feature. The next feature is for our Cloud SQL for SQL Server customers. And what we provide, we recently launched, is the Microsoft Enter ID integration. So customers who use Microsoft Enter ID will find this super useful for them because they can reuse the same identities with the same centralized authentication management, and they'll get all of the benefits of using Microsoft Enter ID. So we launched this feature just a couple of weeks ago. And if you're using Microsoft Enter ID with Cloud SQL, then I encourage you to use this and try it out. The next area is data protection. We integrated with Google Cloud Backup and DR Service to provide you enhanced backups. And enhanced backups have many benefits. And I will not call all of them, but I'll call a few that are very, very exciting. So the first one is the centralized management. You have a single pane of glass where you can manage all of your backups across different projects, across different instances, and even across different services. Second, all of these enhanced backups are stored in immutable air-gapped storage, what we call backup vaults. That means that it protects you against accidental deletion or if the source has been compromised. And then the third one is that you have additional resilience with a much longer retention period. And you can also have disaster recovery without being dependent on the original project. So you have decoupling between your project where you ran the Cloud SQL instance and the backup. There are additional benefits for enhanced backups, as you can see on the slide. And we have this supported for both our Enterprise and Enterprise Plus edition for all of the engines and for regional and multi-regional locations. All right. Now, high availability is another area that our customers really care about. So Cloud SQL offers high availability with our HA configuration. And the Enterprise Plus edition with the HA configuration provides 4/9 of availability SLA. And it has near zero downtime for many of its modification operations. But some customers, they need even higher availability than what you can get with a regional HA. For example, customers in regulated industries sometimes need that multi-region. And Cloud SQL provides multi-region advanced disaster recovery. And it's supported both with Private Service Access and Private Service Connect. And it has two modes. The first mode is replica failover. In the unlikely event that you see a region failure, you can promote your DR replica to be a primary and restore availability immediately. This feature is designed for availability, to prioritize availability, which means that there could be some data loss if you have data in the replication log. We also provide a switchover feature. So in the switchover, you can use it to switch back to the original configuration, or if you want to do a DR test without data loss, because this feature is designed for zero data loss, which means that we promote the replica to be a primary only after all of the data is there. All right, so let's see a demo for this one. So in this demo, we're going to use a guestbook web application where you can put your name and a message, and then the data is stored in a Cloud SQL database. You can also see here on the slide that the data is in the app. Now we're going to use Cloud Run, and we're going to configure the Cloud Run with a Cloud SQL write endpoint. That stays persistent during the failover and switch back. So you don't need to change your application during those failover and switch back. You can see the write endpoint using the gcloud SQL command. Now, we're going to use a primary in this demo, a primary in the US, and we're going to have a replica in Finland. So now, what we're going to do, we're going to simulate a disaster by stopping the primary. Because the write endpoint points to the primary, then once we do that, you're going to see a failure in the application. The service is unavailable. So now we're going to perform a replica failover to the DR region. Immediately after we do the replica failover, you're going to see that we are restoring availability. And as we can see now, we are resubmitting the form, and it works, and the app serves request. So that's what you would do if there is a disaster. Now, let's say we want to switch back. We start the old primary, and when we start it, it is initially a replica. Now, let's say we do a switchover. We want to switch back, so we'll go to the switchover, and we'll switch back to the old primary. Now, this is designed for zero data loss, so we're going to make sure that it has all of the recent updates, all of the data, and only then it is ready to accept new writes, and we're able to get back to the original state. All right, so this was the demo. Again, I think it's super cool, super useful for customers who need that advanced disaster recovery in their multi-region applications. Now, switching gears, I would like to talk about a problem that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. A lot of times you're going to have expensive queries, and then they're going to cause your database to run out of memory. So we launched two features to help reduce the risk of that happening. One for MySQL and one for Postgres. So with MySQL, what we launched is the managed buffer pool. The way it works is that we increase the size or decrease the size of the InnoDB buffer pool. So if we see that we're close to running out of memory, we're going to decrease the size of the pool. And whenever things get stable again, we're going to increase it back to its original size. And the reason that this is effective is because when we allocate memory to the InnoDB buffer pool, we allocate around 70% of the memory. So when you decrease that size, it is very effective in getting back memory to the process. Now, you can use it, you can configure it with different options. The default is 95% memory utilization when it starts shrinking the pool size. Now, with Postgres, we took a different approach. So with Postgres, what we did is that we launched an out-of-memory prevention feature. And the way it works is that we terminate queries that we believe are going to run out of memory. So we have a built-in intelligence to reduce the risk of false positive. And then whenever we do this, we will get an alert, like you see here on the right side, where we say the instance reached nearly 100% of the memory, and we took preventive action and terminated an expensive query. And then you'll be able to see, using the query insights, you will see more details about this query, and you'll be able to optimize it. So if you're using Postgres, I encourage you to try out this feature. If you're using MySQL, I encourage you to try out the Manage Buffer Pool feature. So now let's talk about performance and scale. So the first feature I would like to talk about is read pool. And we launched read pool for all of our engines, and we launched for Postgres and MySQL a bit earlier this year, and then we launched for SQL Server just a couple of weeks ago. And read pool solves the problem where you have a lot of read workload, and you want to offload the read workload off the primary instance. So the read pool is essentially a read endpoint where behind that endpoint you have multiple read replicas, and then you can scale that pool based on the load. So you can add more read replicas, or you can reduce the number of read replicas based on the load. Now, for Postgres and MySQL, we also launch auto-scaling. So we do all of this for you. So auto-scaling will increase the pool size or decrease it based on the load, and it can be used either CPU utilization or number of database connections, and there's all sorts of options for you to configure. So I encourage you to try it out. So another important feature we launched is the managed connection pooling. And I'm sure that you're all familiar with the fact that establishing new connections to a database could be expensive, and I'm sure that many of you have some sort of a solution to manage connections, for example, with a managed connection pool. So what we launched is the managed connection pooling feature, where instead of you using some proprietary or open source connection pool manager, for example, like PG Bouncer, Google does all of the heavy lifting for you. So we do the setup, configuration, patching, and so on. So this feature is super useful for many of our customers who need managed connection pooling. All right, another important aspect of enterprise readiness, and something that our customers care about, is version currency. And in fact, some of our customers always want the latest and greatest as soon as it becomes available in the open source. So this is exactly what we did with Postgres 18. We launched it just a few days after it was available in the open source. Postgres 18 has multiple features across performance and scalability, advanced query optimizations, modern developer tools, security, and reliability. So I'll not go through all of the features. You can read them in the release notes, but I do encourage you to try it out. With Cloud SQL for SQL Server, we recently launched Cloud SQL for SQL Server 2025. It also has many features, and let me talk about the AI features. So the AI features include the vector data, where you can store vector embeddings, and you can also search for them. You can use the disk ANN, which is approximate nearest neighbor, which helps you search for vectors and also does it efficiently with a dedicated index for that. And then we also have Transact SQL AI integration, which means that you can generate embeddings directly using Transact SQL by calling Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform, now in preview, and also third-party APIs. So if you're using vectors with SQL Server, this is a really good option for you. Now, I'm excited to announce that coming soon, we're also going to support Polybase. So Polybase enables you to connect to external data sources like GCS and Oracle together with your SQL Server tables. So for example, you can do one joint query where you have GCS and you have SQL Server tables, and you can join them together in a single query. All right, now at Google, we are redefining what it actually means to use managed databases. And I will give you a couple of examples. So we understand that managing many, many databases at scale can be complex. And this is exactly why we launched Database Center. Database Center is your single pane of glass where you can have all of your different databases. But it's more than just a dashboard. It's an intelligent management tool. It can provide you proactive insights across security, reliability, performance, and then provide you actionable recommendations. There are recently a lot of new features that were launched with Database Center, and if you want to learn more, you can check out the session on Friday about Database Center. Now, I would like to talk another problem that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. So let's say you want to change the schema of your database, or make a configuration change, or use a new feature, or maybe even upgrade your database. So there's a lot of manual work involved, right? So you have to go create a new instance, copy the data, create a test plan, run the tests, compare the results, and then you're going to have a recommendation on what to do next. So I'm excited to announce that coming soon, we're launching the Cloud SQL testing agent. The Cloud SQL testing agent is going to automate all of this for you. So it's going to create a clone of your instance in a non-production environment. And then it's going to create a test plan that you will be able to approve, run the test plan, compare the results, and give you some recommended action. I don't have a demo for this today, but I'm going to do a little teaser. There is going to be another session tomorrow, a Cloud SQL session at 11:45, and they will show also a demo of how this is used. All right, so now I'm proud to introduce Abhishek Kumar, Director of Engineering at Rubrik, who's going to tell us about his company and how Cloud SQL contributed to their success.
Thanks, Itay. I'm sure I can say for everybody here that you have presented so many interesting features that all of us have to go back and figure out how can we leverage these to improve our own fleet. So before I talk about Rubrik's journey and how we leverage Cloud SQL, let me introduce about myself and a little bit talk about Rubrik. So as Itay said, I'm Abhishek Kumar. I have a awesome wife who makes sure that everything is running smoothly. I'm proud father of 2 daughters. One is 7. Her name is Amira. She makes our world beautiful. And we have a 2-year-old. She's a 4-legged troublemaker who makes sure that we are always surrounded with joy. Moving on, what is Rubrik? Rubrik is the security and AI operations company. Our mission is simple but critical. We want to secure world's data. We want to make sure that your data is always available and recoverable under any circumstances, be it a cyber attack, be it a national disaster, or an AI agent gone wrong. What makes Rubrik unique? We have a single platform through which you can do cloud management, data security, identity resilience, and your agent operations under one umbrella. One thing which I'm really excited about is our agent cloud platform. So as more and more companies are deploying their agents, giving production access to those agents, Rubrik can help you achieve that with security and safety. If your agent goes rogue, makes some changes, Rubrik provides you agent rewind options through which you can revert the actions. So in a way, you can unleash your agents in a much secure way. Then we have our Rubrik security, Rubrik Secure Cloud, which is basically where we have all our 6,000 plus customers hosted. It's a SaaS platform where on a day-to-day basis, our customers log in to do their to their data management operations. It is very, very critical because at the end of the day, all our customers use this. So it is very, very critical for us to make sure that it is performant, scalable. Outages, data corruptions are not an option here. And that's where Cloud SQL and Google Cloud comes in. This RSC is hosted on GCP. One thing which I would like to mention here, we have lots of features. One of the recent features which we have introduced is we, for our own customers, now backup Cloud SQL, which is basically complementing Google Cloud's backup and DR services. If you want to know more about Rubrik, we have a booth, 7509. Please come and talk to us. And if you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to help you out. Now, let's move on and see how Rubrik uses Cloud SQL. So as I mentioned, Rubrik has over 6,000 plus customers. We have nearly 20 regions across the world with dozens of database instances running in each of these instances where we have all these customers. Our architecture is multi-tenant, meaning each instance hosts multiple customers. And we also run a very mixed workload on each of these instances, including API traffic, analytical queries, backup jobs, and operational metadata, running all side by side. As Rubrik has grown over years, our fleet has also grown. We started with very small amount of instances, and now we have over 2,200 instances running across 20 regions. We have seen our fair share of issues, but we leveraged heavily on Cloud SQL, various features which Cloud SQL provides, like storage extension, database backup, high availability, matrix observability. We leverage all those different features to make sure that we can leverage, keep growing without many major pain points. We had our fair share of issues while we were scaling our databases. We depended on our resident DBAs. We had an awesome internal DB team, which makes sure that our fleet keeps running. But sometimes we have to depend on Google, and we reached out to Google Cloud support and also reached out to Cloud SQL team internally within Google to help us out with some of these issues. Lastly, we recently started transitioning to Enterprise Plus Edition. I think one of the major issues which we had was every time we do any small maintenance, the restart was 5 to 10 minutes. At our scale, these are not mere inconvenience for our customers. These are basically customer incidents waiting to happen. We have to notify our customer well in advance whenever we are doing any of these upscale activities or any small maintenance. Moving to Enterprise Plus Edition really solved this problem for us. It is a near zero downtime maintenance, and that is one of the biggest wins for us with this move. Let's talk about Enterprise Plus Edition. So as I mentioned, right, like we have 6,000 customers, 200 plus instances. We keep upscaling our instances to keep supporting more and more customers, but once in a while we have to do some kind of maintenance. It used to take 5 to 10 minutes every time we would increase the CPU or increase the memory or do any kind of maintenance. As we moved to Enterprise Plus Edition, it is sub-second, and that is, as I said, one of the biggest wins for us. Other factor was around performance. The workload which we have is very read-heavy. We still wanted very low write latencies, and Enterprise Plus Edition gave us exactly the knobs which we can basically improve our performance without throwing more CPU and more memory and keep upscaling our Enterprise Edition instances. We leverage data cache and to gain the performance improvements, and of course, as I mentioned, zero downtime. These are some real numbers from some of our instances. So we decided to upgrade some of our most critical instances to Enterprise Plus, and over last few weeks, we have seen significant performance improvement. As you can see, CPU utilization, memory, row log time, like some very internal InnoDB numbers are shown clear improvement. One other thing which I would like to mention here is we had some instances which were basically running 40 vCPU, and we moved them to 32 vCPU Cloud SQL Enterprise Plus instances, and we saw similar performance, if not better. So overall, moving to Enterprise Plus Edition was a big step in the right direction for Rubrik. Other factor was around performance. The workload which we have is very read-heavy. We still wanted very low write latencies. We keep upscaling our Enterprise Edition instances, and we saw similar performance, if not better. So overall, moving to Enterprise Plus Edition was a big step in the right direction for Rubrik. I wanted to talk about multiple features. I think Itay introduced many new features, but we leverage, as I mentioned, a lot of features, but I will just highlight 2 of them. First one was Database Center. I think as Itay mentioned, this has been something which is quite useful for us. As I mentioned, we had around 20 regions across the world and multiple database instances running on those things. We want to make sure that we don't deviate with respect to configuration from each other. And doing those maintenance across these 20 regions was a pain. There are instances where somebody has to go and figure out, log into multiple different consoles to figure out what's going on. So yeah, Database Center solved that problem for us. I'll give an example. We have an agent/skill, which basically, instead of reaching out to 20 endpoints, just reach out to Database Center and provides lots of information around configuration mismatch, around security vulnerabilities and whatnot. The next thing which I wanted to talk about is Query Insight. I think as we are all moving towards a world where more and more code is getting generated, having a central team to kind of improve the performance or to be the gatekeeper is not going to last anymore. We have some awesome DBAs, we have some great engineers, but at the end of the day, if we don't do shift left, it would be difficult to maintain the quality of the code which is hitting the production. And that's where Query Insight comes in. So we are actively working to make sure that each of our developer has enough capabilities that they can go and figure out improvement for their queries by themselves. They don't depend on DB experts to take action. So the Query Insight, basically, it's a developer-first experience. With some small onboarding time, your developers can start understanding the issues, they can get actionable insights, and they get end-to-end visibility to actually figure out the bottlenecks and how to make improvements in their queries overall. Okay, if you would want, the thing which I would like you to take home about Rubrik is, if you have data and if you care about your data, you can use Rubrik because we make sure that your data is always available, recoverable against all odds. And if you want to play around with agents in production, please try to use our agent cloud because that will make sure that you can safely deploy those agents. With respect to Cloud SQL, if you are serious about your service, I'm sure you are all serious about your services, make sure that you are using Cloud SQL Enterprise Plus. You make sure that when you scale, you make the configuration, or basically make sure that you have single configuration or policies which adhere, all your instances adhere to those policies. Having buckets of different instances doing different operations can cause issues. Make sure that you leverage all the features like observability, logging to improve your fleet quality. If you run large fleet, Cloud SQL fleet like Rubrik, make sure that you detect the deviation early. Have HA not only for disasters for the Cloud SQL instance, but for your entire overall application. And as the last point says, if you want performance and significant reduction in downtime, make sure you use Enterprise Plus Edition. Yeah, I think that's all from me. I'll pass it back to Bala to basically take us home.
Thank you, Abhishek. There's no better validation for a service than hearing your customers talk about it. And so I appreciate you coming and sharing your story with all of us. As we close here, I do want to talk about some of the Cloud SQL sessions that are going to follow us. And I talked about how we've categorized our innovations into different types. One was focused on the developers. So there's a session called the Developers Platform, Building Agentic AI with Cloud SQL. This is an entire session that's dedicated to all the innovations we've made around developer experience. So if this is a topic you're interested in, I highly encourage you to attend that session. Itay talked a lot about enterprise readiness and how we're raising the bar there. We have an entire session dedicated to that as well. That is a session called Secure by Design, Cloud SQL, Brute Force Protection, and Air Gap Recovery. So do attend that if you're interested in that topic as well. And with that, thank you so much for coming to this session and hearing about Cloud SQL. Itay, Abhishek, and I will be outside. If you have questions, we're happy to answer them.